We like to think of laws as these clear, solid rules, right? But what happens when the very words used to write them can mean completely different things depending on who's reading them? That's what we're digging into today, how the slipperiness of language can turn a simple law into a really complex puzzle.
So, to get us started, I've got a simple question for you. When you see this next word, what's the very first thing that pops into your head?
Just 3 letters. B-A-T. Seems easy enough, doesn't it? But the thing is, the meaning isn't really in the letters themselves. It's all about the context we put around them.
So, were you thinking of a creature of the night? Or maybe a piece of gear for baseball? The thing is, both are totally correct. Without any context, the word is, well, it's ambiguous. And this simple idea is the jumping off point for our entire conversation. You see, this little word puzzle isn't just a brain teaser. It's actually a massive, ongoing challenge in the legal world. Laws are built out of words, and if words themselves can be fuzzy, then the laws they create can be fuzzy too. There's actually a formal name for this: indeterminacy. It's just a fancy way of saying that language isn't always as precise as we'd like it to be. And this indeterminacy is exactly why we need judges to interpret the law, not just read it like some kind of instruction manual.
Let's look at a classic example from the legal philosopher H.L.A. Hart. Imagine you see a sign at a park entrance with this super clear rule. Seems pretty straightforward, right? No room for argument? Or is there?
So, now we're going to put this simple little rule to the test. Because a law that looks perfectly clear on paper can start to completely fall apart when it smacks into the messy reality of the real world. Okay, imagine this. A fire breaks out inside the park. A fire engine comes racing in to put it out. Now, a fire engine is definitely a vehicle. So, technically, did the fire department just break the law? If you read the rule literally, the answer is yes, but that just seems absurd, right? Let's try another one. A kid rolls into the park on a skateboard. Is that a vehicle? I mean, some definitions say a vehicle has to have an engine, which a skateboard doesn't. But others say it's just anything used for transportation. So which definition is the right one? The rule doesn't tell us.
And here's one more that brings up even deeper questions about fairness. What about a person's wheelchair? Is that a vehicle that should be banned? To follow the rule blindly here just feels, well, it feels totally wrong, even unjust.
And this is it. This is the central conflict for any judge. Do they follow the letter of the rule, the exact words written down? Or do they try to figure out the purpose of the rule? You know, what the lawmakers were actually trying to accomplish, like maybe keeping the park safe and quiet. To solve puzzles like this, judges have a main tool in their toolbox. They basically become historical detectives, and they go searching for something called legislative intent. The whole goal is to get inside the heads of the original lawmakers. This legislative intent is supposed to be the guiding star. The idea is that a judge's job isn't to make up new law, but to apply the old law just like its original authors would have wanted. So, how on earth do they find this intent? Well, they can't just guess. To find this intent, they have to dig for clues in historical documents, they'll read through old debate transcripts, they'll look at committee reports, they might even analyze amendments that were rejected, just to see what people were arguing about. It's a huge research project, really, trying to piece together a mindset from the past. Now, just when it feels like we found the perfect solution, just find the intent, problem solved, we hit a huge roadblock. Because a lot of legal scholars, and even some judges, argue that this whole idea of a single legislative intent is a complete myth, a fiction. And that's a pretty powerful challenge, isn't it? If the main tool we use to interpret laws is a fiction, then our whole legal system might be standing on some pretty shaky ground. So, what's their argument? Well, the arguments against it are actually pretty logical. First, a legislature isn't just one person, it's hundreds of people. They might all vote for the same law, but for completely different reasons. So how can you say they all shared one single intent? And second, lawmakers from 100 years ago, how could they possibly have had an intent about something like the internet or, in our case, a skateboard? You just can't predict the future.
At this point, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little abstract, right? Like a philosophical debate you'd have in law school. But the way judges solve this puzzle has huge, real-world consequences that can affect absolutely everyone.
Think about a phrase in a murder law.
Something like grave and sudden provocation. What does that actually mean? Does a nasty insult count? What about a long history of abuse that finally boils over? The way a judge interprets those few words can literally be the difference between a long prison sentence and someone walking free. This isn't just a word game. This is about life, liberty, and justice.
And that brings us right back to our central puzzle. If the laws we live by are built on ambiguous words, and if the main tool we use to figure them out, legislative intent, might not even be real, it leaves us with a really critical question. Who truly gets to decide what the law means? The people who wrote it way back when, or the people who interpret it today? It's a question that gets to the very heart of where power lies in our legal system. Thanks for joining me.